used to turn off birth scenes on the TV. I physically couldn't watch them. The idea of human birth was beyond uncomfortable. And yet somehow I became a woman who chose to give birth on my own, just my husband and I, 4 times. And now I walk with other families who are about to embark on their own birth journeys as well. This episode is the story of how that happened, from avoiding birth entirely to being called into it. This is the Earthbound Parenting Podcast, where we discuss all things pregnancy, birth, postpartum, partnership, parenting, and how to take radical responsibility in each one. Being Earthbound is a wild adventure, so allow me to be your guide. I'm your hostess, Chai Shwal, traditionally trained birth guardian, birth educator, and mother of 4 unassisted home-birthed boys. In today's episode, as I mentioned, I'm sharing my story. So we're going to start back at my childhood. Don't worry, we won't stay there long. But here it's story time, so settle in and listen closely. So it all began once upon a time in my childhood. I used to watch surgeries on TV. It was back when they had actual surgeries on regular TV. And I would watch them because I have always been fascinated with science, with medicine, with anatomy, and all of that kind of stuff. And you know what? It was probably weird for a 10-year-old to be doing that, to be watching surgeries like that. My mom definitely thought it was weird, but that's what I was doing. And usually after these surgeries, immediately after those shows would end, they would start the TV show that I think was called A Baby Story or Maternity Wing or something like that. But basically, the intro would start and I would scramble to find the remote or just get up and go turn the TV off myself because the intro was awful. It looked horrible. It was like this, oh, pleasant music, blah-de-blah. But the visuals, and with the audio a little bit underlaid, the visuals were hospital birth. It was women screaming. It was bright lights. It was clinical, surgical attire and gloves and screaming women and women that looked like they were in agony and all of this horrible stuff. And then, oh, look, a baby. And I always thought, that's terrible. I hate it. I hated all things human birth. And I grew up out in the country. I grew up with animals. And I was familiar with animal birth, but the two did not go together in my mind. They were entirely separate. Animal birth was nice and cool and a part of nature and a fun thing to observe and all of that, whereas human birth looked like hell on earth, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So I would quickly turn all that off, and anytime anybody would talk about birth stories, I'd be like, la 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 la, oh, I hate it, right? And the only thing I knew about my mom's birth with me was that I broke her tailbone. So that was all the context I had for birth for most of my childhood, my growing up time. So fast forwarding into adulthood, I got married. And pretty much right away, we knew that we wanted to start a family. So then I realized, oh crap, I don't know anything about birth. The only thing I knew was I broke my mom's tailbone, what I was seeing on TV. You have to do it in a hospital. It's generally after 9 months. and my mom's crazy hippie cousin lived in Hawaii and had all her babies at home in a river or something, probably, while everybody danced around a bonfire or whatever. I don't know. My family had very strong feelings about the weirdness of hippie life, which is very ironic for now. But that's a story for another time. So that's all I knew. And I realized I needed to know something, right? Because I've never been somebody to just blindly walk into things. So I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. And there actually were not a lot. There was almost nothing on YouTube. It wasn't really a thing at the time. I'm not that old, but I am old enough, I guess. And podcasts were kind of newer. So podcasts were starting to come out, and it wasn't so new that there was nothing, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. So it was already a pretty well narrowed down media source, that I figured this might be a good middle ground. It's not too much as just like trying to search on the internet, a blanket search in the internet. It was something that felt a little bit more focused by nature, and I just wanted to see what I could find. I was not interested in listening to birth stories, which is, again, ironic. But at the time, I just was not interested in birth stories. I didn't want to have anything to do with birth stories. I didn't care about birth. Again, I remember I still had that mentality, and the only reason that I was researching in the first place was because of my own selfish, means, right? My own selfish intentions. So I didn't want to hear about other people's stories. And that's the way it was. So I was going through birth podcasts, and it was pastels, and it was cursive, and it was squiggly drawings of pregnant ladies, and it was so girly, so flowery, so frilly. And I'm not, well, now I'm a bit more that way. I don't know why. But at the time, again, I was like, I am not interested. So I scrolled past all of those, and I found one that was so ugly. The icon was hideous, and it stood out to me. It was so starkly different. It practically punched you in the face as I scrolled by. Pastel, pink, lavender, flowers, cursive, poof, bright orange, like it was made on Paint, which some of you may not even know what that is. It was a program. It was like the only way you could like color and do stick people and draw things on the computers back in ye olden days. And you could do the paint bucket filling the space. You weren't like drawing, like they have really lovely apps now that you can do actual art. It was just like click, color, fills that space. There you go. So it was very like, and just, again, the colors were awful. And I just was so amused by it that I thought, okay, I'll try this. And it was a life-changing podcast. It's not really running anymore, and so I won't name it. But it was spectacular. So it was a podcast by a woman who was a midwife, an out-of-system midwife, and she was almost every episode, she was covering a different routine or a different stereotype or a different concept, and just talking about them, thinking about why are we doing this. She was sort of speaking and thinking critically and sharing her thoughts and explaining why this routine doesn't make any sense according to physiology, and this thing over here doesn't make any sense according to physiology, and this thing over here we sort of take for granted, and maybe we should dive into that a bit more, and that kind of stuff. And that really speaks to me. I am that kind of person, so this was just like, it was gold. I struck oil, for sure. So I was eating up this birth podcast, and it was amazing. So through them, they had that podcast, the people that created that podcast, they had a physiological birth course that was pretty short. It was short and sweet. It was really rough. Again, it was before there were all the platforms and all the systems and things that we have now. That's just not how things were. So it was very like roughly put together, but it did the job, and that's all we needed, right? So my husband and I, because I basically trapped him, we would carpool to drive to work for part of the time for a good while when I became pregnant. And so I would trap him and then play some of these episodes for him that I thought he should know. And so eventually he became interested and could see the logic and the reason behind these different decisions, these things that I was talking about wanting to do. And so we decided that this was something we wanted to pursue. So I was pregnant, and I was about halfway through my pregnancy, and we decided to move to a new area. And that kind of complicated things because I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to have a midwife. I definitely did not want a hospital birth. but I wasn't sure I wanted a midwife. And part of that was because I was moving to a new area, and I am by nature a very private person. And for multiple reasons, I was not at all interested in trying to get to know someone within a handful of months, not even a handful of months, get to know them well enough that they didn't feel like a stranger anymore, and then invite them into be a part of one of the most vulnerable states of being that I was going to be in. It just, nothing about that sounded great. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. We didn't tell my family. We didn't tell his family. We kept this to ourselves until pretty much the very end, because we didn't want their paranoid. Actually, it's not. There was some paranoia, but there was some very, logical concern for us. It was our first pregnancy. It was our first baby. No one in the family had done that sort of thing before. Only that crazy hippie, from in Hawaii did that stuff. And, what we think about crazy hippies. They're crazy. Those crazy hippie people. Anyway, I digress. So that was our plan. That was when we decided to plan for an unassisted birth. And the birth came a month late, but he came. And it was absolute textbook perfection. Textbook perfection. I couldn't have asked for anything better. It was amazing. It was amazing. And absolutely life-changing. And so from that point on, my love of birth grew. I became a huge birth nerd. I started reading a bunch of really great books, too many to try and list and yeah, but they were different books that were dissecting the research, or I was doing my own research as well alongside. These books definitely were great for that, but they dissected research around birth and home birth and midwifery care versus obstetrical care and all these different things. It dissected health science. These books were diving into the spiritual and physical interweavings of birth. There were some of these books involved home birth stories and of real women, real life stories. I was actually, at this point, actually interested in hearing birth stories. I was listening to podcasts like Birthing Instincts and Down to Birth were probably some of my core ones. Shout out, and I'm going to put that in my show notes so that you can go check them out if you're interested. But they were really, really great resources of information. Again, that sort of marriage of spiritual, emotional reflection around the journey of birth, but also looking at the science and the research and real life scenarios and all of these really, really cool things that, again, it's like, yeah, it was fascinating. I was also heavily involved in a natural home birth community online. Again, it was all linked in with that podcast that I was listening to originally. They're not really a thing so much anymore, so I won't name them. Now, actually, there are a bunch of these communities all over the place, which is really, really cool. And but that was not the case back then, so I was staying really heavily involved with this particular community. And then around that same time, I had another baby. Stop wading through piles of possibilities when it comes to sourcing quality liver supplements. I found the best one for you. Introducing Kosher Carnivore's grass-fed beef liver capsules, artisanally crafted in small batches in Florida. There are absolutely no fillers, flow agents, GMOs, or allergens, 100% freeze-dried, and 100% glot kosher. This is nature's true superfood with over 23 different vitamins and minerals made bioavailable by God himself. Liver boosts your energy, brain function, iron levels, and immune system. It improves skin, hair, blood health, and even supports liver function. A powerful supplement during pregnancy, but honestly, it's powerful for anyone in any season of life. Get your own Kosher Carnivore liver capsules and enjoy 15% off your order when you use code CHAYA. Follow the link in the show notes and get shopping. Even so, even though I was diving into birth, I was learning a lot more. I was definitely in my birth nerd era. I still did not want to be a midwife. Midwives were good at relating to people. At the time, I felt I was really bad at that. Midwives who operated within the system were forced to compromise their morals. I wasn't willing to do that. Again, this is my perception at the time. Midwives who operated outside of the system were forced into living a life of paranoia and would likely end up in jail. I wasn't interested in that. Midwives today looked like nothing like how they used to look just about a century ago. Too many medical supplies, too many clients, not enough room for taking care of themselves or their families or their homestead. And I believe too strongly in ancestral wisdom and traditional lifestyles. So it didn't seem compatible with my desires, my goals in life. Then God began to beckon me. The community I was part of had opened up an online midwifery school with in-person, hands-on skills components to it, but it was primarily online. So that was the first sign of God sort of beckoning me. And a little note about my relationship with God. My relationship with God has pretty much always been mixed with stubbornness. He says things like, I want you to go do that. And I say things like, I don't want me to go do that. I want you to do this. I don't want me to do this. And we go back and forth, and this was no different. So God continued to tap me on the shoulder. With this school, I could learn how to operate within or without any system, without compromising my morals, without living in fear. It was a good structure in teaching how to navigate all of that. I said no thanks. With this school, I could learn in an environment that honored the sacred alongside the science. I said no thanks. Over and over, I said no thanks, and the shoulder taps kept coming. So finally, I said, okay, fine, but if you want me to do this, you have to put it together. That's what I said to God. I'm not even that is literally what I said to God. I said, okay, fine. If you want me to do this, you have to put it together. And he absolutely did. Literally within it was not more than 3 weeks. So about 2 to 3 weeks, everything that I needed to apply fell into place. And when I say fell into place, I mean, I didn't have the money. I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the capacity. I didn't know how this was all going to happen. And everything came to me just in 2 to 3 weeks. And so I said, okay. And I enrolled and began my classes within that year. So here I am today, not just a birth nerd, but also a birth educator. Not just a woman who had 4 unassisted births, but also a woman who has been given the privilege of being part of the births of others. I am someone who's taking everything I've learned and experienced, and I'm using it to guide families across their threshold of new parenthood. I get to be a lantern on the path of each family who invites me into their journey. And it's all thanks to God. It's all thanks to Hashem. So that's where I am at today, and that's my story thus far. So I hope you enjoyed hearing the backstory, hearing how I got here from running away from human birth to running after it. and yeah. If you're new here and preparing for a sovereign birth, just like I did, start with the Secret series. It's private and designed to orient you properly, so there are details in the show notes. Otherwise, feel free to share your input in the comments below. Try to keep things civilized. Remember, we can only do the best with the tools that we have. If you've gotten value out of this video, give us a like, subscribe, or consider donating through my website. If you're just listening, give the channel a few stars. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now. Teaching on the screen, pregnancy, birth, and beyond. My other channel. Did you love that haiku just now? Of course you did, because it's about my other channel called Earthbound DIY Birth, where I do what it sounds like. I teach you how to take radical responsibility for your own birth and the childbearing year. Go check it out, and I'll see you over there. Intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing in this video is medical or legal advice. By engaging with this content, you agree to take full responsibility for your own experiences and decisions as a result. Everything on this channel is property of Prudence Ministries, a private healing association, unless otherwise stated. Blessed is Adonai, divine sovereign, who brought us to this place and this time for this purpose.